Welcome to Olympian Water Testing, giving you the best in water analysis. Today we're looking at the Utah Department of Environmental Quality drinking water, and Chromium6 in Utah drinking water has triggered some questions and some concerns. And as we know, there's different types of chromium. There's trivalent and hexavalent. Now, Chromium3 is generally not very harmful, and it can actually be used for some positive effects. But Chromium6 is quite dangerous. So what happened and what are they doing about it? So in recent reports and the presence of hexavalent Chromium6 in the drinking water in several northern Utah counties have raised concerns among residents about the safety of the state's drinking water. Fortunately, the levels found in Davis-Weber and Box Elder County drinking water systems are below the California state standard, the only standard for Chromium6 in the country. And the EPA will likely develop a new standard for Chromium6, the Department of Environmental Quality Divisions of Drinking Water, DDW. And they're watching these developments closely, and they're committed to ensuring the state drinking water standards protect Utah residents. So, what is Chromium6? It's also known as hexavalent, and it's a naturally occurring element found commonly in the Earth's crust and has multiple forms. And two of its most common forms have extremely different impacts on humans and the environment. First, there's trivalent, which is 3, and that's an essential nutrient to human health, and it's actually found in fruits, veggies, grains, and meat. Hexavalent occurs naturally in the environment, but it's also produced through the industrial process. So it can be mining, agriculture, and 6 can actually be released into the environment naturally through erosion or through leaching from industrial sites. Both forms of chromium are soluble in water. But what are they going to do specifically about 6? And what will the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, do? So the Safe Water Drinking Act, SDWA, requires the EPA to establish maximum containment levels, or MCLs, for drinking water. And the MCL is the compliance standard for public water systems, and the MCLG is the level where there's no known health effects. The EPA looks at 3 factors when establishing these standards. Is there a meaningful health benefit to regulate the containment? Are there technically feasible technologies to detect, reduce, or remove the containment? And how much will the treatment cost? And the MCL is the legally enforceable level that must be met by drinking water systems. The EPA tries to set the MCL as close to the MCLG as possible, but quite often the price to achieve the MCLG makes it cost prohibitive. Once the EPA determines the MCL for a particular containment, the DDW adopts the standard and develops corresponding state rules. So that is a good start. Definitely they have one level of the EPA, and it can determine what levels are too high. And then it allows state enforcement to work through that. That being said, why have concerns about Chromium6? Well, a long-term animal study by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services National Toxicology Program in 2008 suggested that Chromium6 may be carcinogenic when ingested, and prior to this study, skin irritation was seen as the most common symptom of Chromium6 exposure. And inhaled hexavalent chromium was already recognized as a human carcinogen, and this information indicated Chromium6 could also be carcinogenic at certain levels in drinking water. And the EPA responded to this new information by initiating an extensive review of the health effects of Chromium6 under the Unregulated Containments Rule, and the EPA selects public water systems to test for containments under consideration for regulation. Since Chromium6 had not been previously tested in isolation with Chromium3, it was included on the unregulated containment list. And what has this shown? Well, in 2009, the agency required all water systems in the country to test their water for Chromium6. They also funded testing of a select few small water systems in each state. And this approach ensured the vast majority of the nation's population had their water tested for hexavalent chromium. And the interesting thing about this is the EPA can get a little bit of this. Like the EPA doesn't currently have a stand for Chromium6. In California, established an MCL of 10 parts per billion as an MCLG of 0.02 parts per billion in 2014. But all of Utah's tests fall well below that California MCL of 10 ppb. And it's unknown whether that rule process of the standard of evaluation will be matched by the EPA. So why is this important? Because while the EPA can set standards and the state can follow them, and they do recommend testing, it's always part of your responsibility, especially if you live in this region or if you live in another region, to make sure that Chromium6, hexavalent chromium, is not in elevated levels in your water. That's why it's always a good idea, even if there are federal or state regulations, to always have your water periodically tested.